Hello and welcome to Tech24 with me, Rebecca Bowring. Coming up in the programme, the most eagerly awaited sporting event of the year is upon us. All eyes are on London for the 2012 Olympic Games. We'll look at the hottest innovations to improve performance and timekeeping. Plus a test run for record-breaking carbon prosthetic limbs. South African athlete Oscar Pistorius hopes his flex-foot cheetahs will bring him Olympic gold. London's proud moment has finally arrived as the world's biggest sporting event, the Olympics, gets underway. More than ever before, these games are branding themselves as digital. There'll be over 2,500 hours of coverage, live and on demand. Adobe's partnering NBC on the first ever Olympics app, and Panasonic is broadcasting the games in 3D. Web users can connect with their sporting heroes via Facebook's Olympics Hub and benefit from free Wi-Fi at 41 tube stations. There's no need for cash thanks to Visa's PayWave app. Just swipe your mobile. Even London's recycling bins have gone high-tech, displaying news, weather and financial information. So that's us catered for, but what about the 17,000 athletes? Well, to answer that, France 24 sports editor Dan Levemy joins me in the studio. Thanks for being with us, Dan. So first of all, tell us about the starting blocks, because they've been a little bit controversial with the world's fastest man.
Yeah, Usain Bolt, of course. Now, he's actually not a particularly good starter, so he does need to get this right, despite being the world record holder in all those sprinting events. But basically, Omega, the Swiss watchmaking company, have developed new starting blocks. And the difference with these is that instead of basically measuring the movement from the athlete, they measure the thrust and the force. They're a bit more sensitive. Now, the IAAF, the International Athletics Federation, have said that it's going to help the athletes to improve their start. However, that remains to be seen. But Bolt's complaint was that they were too small for his feet. He obviously has pretty big feet. He's quite a big guy. And he said they were too small. The problem is they're not. They're exactly the same size. They're exactly the same length. They're actually a little bit wider as well. But nonetheless, to make sure he got it right, he bought a set. I think they're about €4,000. So he's probably got some at home to practice.
Yeah. That's a very good idea. Now, timing is, of course, crucial in all sports, including swimming and cycling. And we're seeing sensors put on the front wheels, aren't we, of bikes, and also touch pads used in swimming to make sure that the very moment that a swimmer finishes the race, that is logged. Now, if we stick with swimming and talk a little bit more about this sensor technology, I understand that now sensors are being put into athletes' swimming costumes so that you can check out how well you're doing in training.
Well, training, yeah, of course, is absolutely vital for people who are trying to finish, sometimes millimetres ahead of their rivals. And in swimming as well, they have these touch pads at the end of the lanes, and they have to be sensitive to the brush of a finger, because sometimes it really does come down to the fact that whether one athlete's finger is touching ahead of the other or not. And also, they have to be sensitive enough to notice the brush of a finger, the lightest brush, but also not if the water is pushed against them, register the end of a race when the athlete hasn't even arrived. So they have to be able to discern between the finger touch and also the touch of the water pressure. And they can actually measure to 1/10,000th of a second, these pads. And obviously that can make the difference between gold, silver or bronze.
And we're also seeing sensors used in other sports like fencing and taekwondo in socks.
Yeah, in taekwondo, this is an absolute revolution because it was normally done by human judges. So there were, as you can imagine, errors despite their high level of training. But what they have is they now have sensors which will be used for the very first time at the Olympics in their socks and also in their body armour, which will tell you when a point has been scored. So this is when a contact has been made sufficiently with enough force to register a point. And this will eliminate the kind of errors that we saw at the Olympic Games, where a bronze medalist, a British bronze medalist, was nearly eliminated from the semi-finals in the final seconds in 2008 because of a judging error. And of course, it's a sport that badly needs to get those kind of decisions right.
Another big attraction at the Games is, of course, the tennis, and that's a sport that's using Hawkeye technology, something that we're also seeing seep into football. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, football recently, the International Football Association Board, which is IFAB, which is the rule-making body of football, decided they would greenlight two different goal line technology systems. One is Hawkeye, which is a camera-based system. It was developed in the UK, actually owned by Sony now. And also the other one is Goalref, which is a kind of Danish-German collaboration which uses magnetic fields. So basically clubs and events will be able to use these technologies to decide whether the ball has crossed the line or not. This can obviously be hugely controversial, and you think that all of the billions of euros that's generated by this sport, all of the billions of people that watch it, and we can't always tell whether the ball has actually crossed the line or not, the most crucial part of the sport. And it's kind of bizarre that we've been living in a way in the dark ages in this sport, but finally it's been approved. And this actually came from a crucial moment at the 2010 World Cup. The FIFA president, Sepp Blatter, saw Frank Lampard score what we call a ghost goal for England against Germany, and the ball did cross the line, it wasn't given, and he said that's the moment that we're going to have to change it, we're going to have to make a difference.
So technology being used there to help out referees. Thanks for that, Dan. Stay with us, we'll be talking about blade running next. Another first for the 2012 Olympics is the participation of an amputee sprinter. The South African Paralympic champion Oscar Pistorius is running in the individual and relay 400 metres, wearing durable carbon fibre prosthetic limbs called Flex Foot Cheetahs. The design is inspired by the big cat's hind leg. The J shape allows the prosthetic to compress and spring back, storing and releasing the athlete's energy. As we run on the balls of our feet, it has no heel. The cheetahs are made by the Icelandic firm Olander and cost around €5,000 for the system. We're thrilled to have one of them in the studio with us today. Now, Dan, the manufacturer is keen to point out this isn't a bionic foot. Is that why they've been allowed into the Olympics, controversially so?
Yeah, well, it's quite a long story, in fact, the tale of whether he would be allowed, Oscar Pistorius and other athletes like him, to compete in the Olympic Games. To give you a brief history, he first started competing in able-bodied events in 2007. The IAAF then actually made a ruling that he would not be allowed to compete. This was in early 2008, just before the Beijing Olympic Games, and they said that he wouldn't be allowed to compete in their events, which included those games. This came after a study in Cologne that decided that he was actually gaining an advantage by wearing them. However, that was overturned in 2008 in May, so just before the Olympic Games, by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which said that it was actually, they hadn't taken into account the fact that there's an acceleration period, and that was actually overall not giving him advantage. There was no proof of it. He didn't qualify for the Games in the end, but he has qualified here for London, and he's previously won as well silver at the World Championships in the able-bodied events, and also as well at the African Championships recently in Porto Novo in Benin.
It is an incredible piece of technology. As we see there, it's got that kind of, well, you said it's quite rigid actually, but it has a sort of implicit spring because the athlete's weight presses down on it. Obviously, Pistorius will not be wearing this cheetah skin.
Not with these snazzy little claws.
Version.
Yeah.
Now, as I say, €5,000, so these sort of things do not come cheap.
No.
And I'm wondering, you know, as technology strives to make sport fairer with things like goal line technology, is it actually the case that countries that have more money to throw at it are getting an unfair advantage over countries that don't?
Well, I think there's, as you point out, on the day, it's making it fairer to have technology there because we can decide whether somebody has crossed the line before somebody else or not, and we can have a more objective view of that. But there's no doubt that having better technology leads to better performances. And you can see it even sort of intergenerationally, because if you see that from one generation to another, people improve. And also when host nations hold an event, they often put a lot of money into technology and developing the kind of systems that are going to enable them, rather, to improve the training of their athletes. And that's really where it becomes crucial, helping to train them. But we shouldn't forget as well that these guys put in a lot of effort. You can't remember the effort that the coaches and the athletes put in on the day and leading up to the event.
Thank you very much for being my guest on the programme this week, Dan Levy, and thank you to you for watching this edition of Tech24. That's just about it from us. Get in touch with us via the social network. Follow the URL coming up in the corner of your screen. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter at TechF24. We end as usual with our clip of the week. If, like most of us, you didn't manage to get tickets to the Olympics, there is another way to enjoy them. Take a look at this trailer for Sega's official video game, out for PC, Xbox 360 and PS3. There are 45 different sports to turn your hand to, including cycling, gymnastics and track and field.